Hello and welcome to this 21st session of the Afghan Association of Ontario program on racism, discrimination, and Islamophobia and hatred of all kinds. This program is an initiative of the Afghan Association of Ontario in collaboration with and partial funding of the Government of Canada. In this program, we invite people with experience and or expertise in the area of racism, discrimination, hatred, and Islamophobia, and interview them so they can share their stories with us. And in today's program, we have a distinguished guest, Nokha Dakroub. And Nokha, welcome to the program, and thank you for your time and your support for this program.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Yeah, so in order not to waste our viewers' time, I will just mention viewers welcome whether you are, in your daytime or evening or in the morning. Welcome to this program, and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I'm sure that Nokha will be willing to share her insights on those questions. So just to start, Nokha, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, absolutely. So, my professional background is actually I'm a social worker, and I've been a social worker for over 10 years now. But also for my family background is I'm Lebanese. I was born in Dubai, which is where my father's family lives, and grew up in Beirut, Lebanon, which is where my mother's family lives. We moved here when I was, in my very early teens, went to high school here in Canada, and went to university, got into the workforce, and eventually I ran for the school board. I ran pretty early. I was in my mid-20s when I got elected, and I'm very grateful for the support that the community has given me since that time. And so that's kind of where I started.
Thank you very much. We have a few things in common. Mm-hmm. First of all, I lived for 17 years in Lebanon.
Wow,
In Beirut. I studied in the American University of Beirut. I'm a graduate studying architecture, and I also got my MBA from the same university.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I worked for 7 years there as an architect before I came here.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
What year did you leave Lebanon?
1985. It was in the middle of the war.
Yeah. It's a good time to leave.
I also worked on some iconic projects in Dubai, but most probably when they were built, you were already in Canada. But that's another story. Just tell me, because you're a former school board trustee, and you work with institutions, you work with other organizations, and you were, participated as a community activist in elections and all that stuff. You will be exposed to a lot of talk or conversations related to racism, to discrimination, to Islamophobia, to hatred, to anti-Semitism, etc. Tell me, what did you hear and how big of an issue was that?
So in my work at the school board, I led a lot of conversations about discrimination in public education, and ways we could counter that and eliminate it. My work on equity issues and anti-discrimination issues really started shortly after I got elected at the school board. And, like I mentioned, I was young when I got elected. I knew I had a professional background. I had worked in schools by then. But you don't really fully understand the system and how complex problems can be within it until you have a much more meaningful and and more complex experience. And when I became a trustee, it quickly started to become very obvious that the population in Peel specifically had changed and grown and become more diverse over the years. But unfortunately, at that time, the educational institutions in the area, and specifically the school board that I was elected to, hadn't kept up with the demands of the community. One of the biggest things that came up, the first issue, not the first issue, but I think it was one of the first big issues that really came up, and I'm sure some of your viewers may remember, was the issue around Friday prayers at the Peel board. And it was a big thing, and it was all over the news. And not a lot of people remember the details of it, but essentially what had happened is the school board actually tried to script khutbahs for students. So you're aware when students pray, there's a part is the khutbah, right? Yeah. So the school board essentially wanted to control what could be said in a khutbah, and they essentially came up with 6 pre-written scripts for students that if they wanted to pray in schools, they had to actually, recite one of those word for word. Now, obviously, that doesn't sound right to anybody, and and we fought that. We fought that really, really hard. I led the fight along with students and community members, and it wasn't right. And but what I learned from that, and eventually the school board backtracked, because there's a lot of legal opinions. They sought legal opinion and all those sorts of things that were going on. But and there was a lot of pressure from the community, and it attracted a lot of media attention. But what I learned from that was the distance, just the sheer distance between the people making decisions in our educational institutions and the community's needs. And from then on, you become a little bit more attentive to when things come up. And also people started reaching out to me more. And I had colleagues at the school board, 2 of them specifically, who were also very interested in equity issues and who also came from diverse backgrounds. And the 3 of us got elected on the same day. And we kind of became very, very close very quickly, because we really understood each other and connected. My apologies, my daughter's. Sorry. And so, moving from that point forward, we ended up starting to work on issues around equity and student belonging, and there were some research projects that came about just to tell us more information about the students that we were serving. And whenever there was a project that would be brought forward, we always, unfortunately, what we thought would happen was confirmed all the time. So we never, we were always expecting that students would say that they didn't feel like they belonged, and lo and behold, the report would come forward, and that's what it would say. And from then on, we started talking about different initiatives that I will talk about a bit later. And that's kind of how my background.
There was a lot of conversations, but in your case, unique situation because you started the conversations rather than you were exposed to it.
Yeah,
which is a good perspective. And also, I would like to mention that I'm surprised that Canada, which is famous for liberal education, will kind of impose this idea where students are not exposed to liberal education, to critical thought process, but it reminded me of totalitarian regimes in the Middle East who will dictate khutbas to the the Ministry of Endowment will determine which kind of khutbas should be mentioned. But anyway, now you referred to a few items. You are a woman, and you started to work, to champion the cause of the Muslims in the community, in the school board, in the society, for Muslims in Ontario, if I might say. And you have experienced, in that respect, any kind of racist or Islamophobic comments or discriminatory comments, considering that discrimination is not based on religion, but also on gender, and you are a woman, and you are an activist. So I would like to have some ideas of what you faced in that arena.
So for sure, I think, for me, it was an actually interesting experience because, women who wear the hijab certainly face a lot more discrimination than I ever have. I think for me, I've received a lot of, not so favorable interactions from people who just generally believed that, that this is a woke ideology, and we're ruining the schools by talking about racism, and we should just not even think about that, and just focus on teaching math and science and all those kinds of things. So I received things like that. But being a woman specifically in general, and I think this applies on every country in the world, but I think, especially being a young woman, I always felt that I had to work a bit harder to be taken seriously. And I had to, articulate something not just once, but twice or three times. And, I think I even spoke about this at the board table once, that I found that often I would bring up emotion or bring something up, and everybody, some of my colleagues would want to shut it down, but then a few weeks later, they would all be aligning themselves with what I wanted to do in the first place. And that was a very disheartening experience, because I know that that's a common experience that a lot of women go through, whether it's at the board table, whether it's in parliament, whether it's around the cabinet table, or just in the workplace, in any management position or leadership position. I think that's a very common experience, which is unfortunate. But, for me, it was always, I'm a fighter, and I'm always ready for a fight. And for me, it was always about the kids, And I was, my job was to stand up for the kids and to do what's in their best interest, and think 20, 30 years down the line, what should public education look like? What do we want society to look like? So a couple people want to dislike me because of that. That's okay.
Okay. So. Well, you from our conversation, it shows that you are a person who is very confident, which is very important when you are in the public domain and you want to push some ideas. And in that respect, it's very good. I commend you for your effort and for, to have taken the effort to be in that position. So that's good. And I also heard a few weeks ago that the Peel Board of Education is the first Board of Education that has a policy on Islamophobia. Since you are a former member of this board, tell us a little bit about that so that our viewers can find out about how policies can come into existence and change.
Yeah, for sure. So fast forward a little bit from where I left off on the some of the issues and how things kind of started. So we continued our advocacy work, and in 2019, it all came to there was a big fight at the school board, and we advocated, myself and one other colleague, we advocated for a review for discrimination issues at the Peel District School Board be conducted by the Ministry of Education. And the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Education actually took our concerns very seriously, and he did order a review of the Peel District School Board. And specifically, the review found issues around anti-Black racism that were very, very, all over the board in every school. There were issues everywhere, and Islamophobia. They also found issues on anti-Semitism and also hate towards members of the LGBTQ plus community. And this was, they conducted interviews. It wasn't, we went to them and we said, look, there's a problem here, and it's a serious problem, and the board's not fixing it. And you're the Minister of Education. This is your job, and you're responsible for every school board. So you got to take a look at the school board. And he did. And they had a full-on investigation that went on for about 3-4 months. And they interviewed, I think it was over 600 families or 600 people who came forward and told specific stories and brought in, like, this is the email I sent, and this is who I talked to, and this is what happened, and all that. And what ended up as a result of that is the minister ordered 27 directives, so 27 orders for the board to comply with, to his satisfaction. So, and those were 27 sets of policies that the board had to do and things that they had to change. One of them was de-streaming grades 9 and 10. Because there were issues around Black students and brown and students from the South Asian community being streamed into applied, and so, and then so we got rid of streaming in grades 9 and 10, and that eventually became a provincial policy that's happened all across the province. That came from Peel. And another really big thing was suspending, banning suspensions in kindergarten, because yes, they used to suspend kids in kindergarten. And I don't know what you have to do as a kindergarten student to get suspended, but that was going on. And things like, completely changing the bylaws and the governance operations and how things worked. Not allowing meetings behind closed doors, and having, very specific reasons why any trustees wouldn't meet in public, and all those kinds of things. And it's all public information, so the viewers can also look it up and read more about it if they want. And fast forward after that, we actually asked the minister to actually take over the school board, and put in a supervisor, because it's great to send in, orders after a review, but you need to make sure that the board has the capacity to actually get these things done. And myself and my colleague, Kathy McDonald, we both believed, we just didn't have faith in that the board had the capacity at that time. And the minister sent in a supervisor. That changed everything. So once the supervisor was there, we were able to do a lot more work, because that kind of, made everything, a lot smoother. There was change in the bylaws and all those different changes that would have taken, I think, if the supervisor didn't come in, that would have taken 30 years to get all that stuff done. But it just kind of fast-tracked everything. And that's when I decided, that was the perfect opportunity to bring a motion forward. I was still at the board, to develop the first anti-Islamophobia strategy.
Oh.
And I put that forward, and it was approved because of the circumstances. Nobody fought me for it. No one said a word. not a single comment was made, and it was approved. And then we made an announcement. So the announcement happened in October of 2021 that it was coming. And the strategy included well, at the time the announcement included that it would have a mandatory training for all staff, anti-Islamophobia training. So after that, staff had to work to create the strategy. I was part of. So what I did is I created the framework for the strategy, working with staff and community members, obviously.
Yes, yeah.
But I was involved in creating the framework of it, of what it's going to include. And then from then on, staff in consultation with community members created the full strategy. And then there were some wider community consultations to gather more feedback. And then the strategy was actually, like the actual full strategy was actually approved this past January. And I had left the board by then. But it was quite nice to see something continue on as after you.
Yeah, that's. I would say that is your legacy in the board.
It is,
one part of your legacy.
That and the review.
Yeah,
those two.
I congratulate you for that achievement. And
Thank you.
My next question, I have two other issues covered with you. One of them is, in terms of, from your experience, there are these community and religious organizations all over in Peel, all over Ontario, in all the major cities that belong to minority communities or minority religions, etc. And in your opinion, how can these organizations prepare their membership so that the membership have several things? On one hand, be good ambassadors of their community or of their faith. The second one is that they will have a lot of confidence that they will not allow people to address them in a derogatory manner, which I believe you wouldn't allow things like that to happen to you in that respect, because of your self-confidence, and then to be a good ambassadors of the community. So what role should these organizations play in that respect?
So what I would say, now, of course, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel unsafe and somebody is, saying horrible things,
physical or verbal abuse.
Yeah. So, the goal there is to de-escalate and to get out of that situation. But I think, in terms of how to be good ambassadors and how to, the biggest thing that I noticed throughout my time at the school board is the systems and people who are in government or in, at the school board or at hospitals or whatever, they only hear from people who are involved. They don't hear from people who are sitting in their houses and they're not involved. So my biggest advice to parents was always get involved. We need people to be involved. And people always, think that community services is about, just doing community work in my own ethnic or religious community. And that's very important. That is very, very important. But we also need people to do community service and volunteer and get involved in the more systemic structures that exist, because that's how we get our voice heard, right? We need to make sure that every parent council has people who represent different worldviews and different perspectives and from diverse backgrounds and can bring so much knowledge and lived experience to the table. So there's parent councils to get involved in. There's different committees to get involved in. There's city committees to get involved in. There's all sorts of, opportunities for involvement. And I always encourage political involvement because, whether you're a conservative or an NDP or a liberal, the reality is that's who runs the country, right?
Yes.
One of them is going to win, and one of them is going to be in charge, and they're going to make decisions for the rest of us. So we need to make sure that we are involved so that there's an understanding that is built and information that can there's open communication lines, right? That we could get our issues resolved and heard.
Yeah, this is very good. I am a proponent of what I refer to as the Medina model for community engagement and development, and I have written quite a bit about it. And during the month of Ramadan, every day I used to post something on community engagement and development, and I promote the Medina model, which was actually a model that was developed when the migrants from Mecca went to Medina. Yeah. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he created this formula which has 5 components. The first one is to focus on improving yourself. Yeah. Education-wise, self-confidence-wise, faith-wise, to be a good ambassador of your faith. The second one is to focus on your family. The third one is to focus on education. Yeah. The fourth one is to focus on economic activities so that you don't become a burden to the community, but you are a net contributor rather than a net taker. And the fifth one was to be involved in civic activities. And what you just said is, today's version of that. To be involved in the community rather than to ghettoize yourself. Yeah. And I think if there is any message, perhaps from what you are saying, is that these communities should not ghettoize their members. Let them prepare them to be self-confident and let them to be part of the community, get involved in civic activities and in political activities and other community activities, become net contributors to the overall society.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, from my experience, the school board didn't change until, myself and 2 other colleagues from diverse backgrounds. One was from the Black community and one from the Sikh community, and myself, a Muslim woman, got elected. It was never going to change. Yeah. If the 3 of us, if that was, I call, we were the perfect storm to go in there and just be like, what is this? We don't like this. This is not good. Something has to change. We're not going to stop until it changes. So, things don't just happen. Policies don't just come out of the blue. They come from, building shared understanding, getting to know the needs of the community, and we can all be in. But the thing is, we also have to keep in mind, it's tough to live in this society. It's tough to raise a family in this society. So people have a lot on their plate already. Yeah. So. And I understand that because, when you have young children, it's difficult and you're working and you're trying to pay the bills and trying to manage everything. But if you have an hour or 2 hours a month, find a way that you can contribute and let that grow over time. Because, eventually things get
the kids grow. And you have
more time.
Yeah. Well, okay, thank you. In your opinion, what is the role of the government and other institutions, such as the school board? Because the policies of the school board or of the government cannot be just for the next 6 months. It should be for the next 10 years, 20 years, to to envision a kind of a society. So what should their role be in preparing the young generation for that future Canada?
So I think, it's exactly what you just said. And unfortunately, there seems to be not a lot of that. We don't see a lot of people thinking 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the line, especially when we look at school board policies and local policies, and everything tends to be reactive, which is something happened, so now we got to do something about it. But unfortunately, that shouldn't be the case. And the biggest thing about that I'm very proud of about the anti-Islamophobia strategy specifically, the review a little bit, but this is specifically an anti-Islamophobia strategy, is, when I first started thinking about it, how kids aren't born with hate. Nobody's born to hate anyone.
Yeah.
They learn that, right? Yes. Somehow we go from being this, innocent child, not we, but some people go from this being this innocent child to having some sort of discrimination or hate. And there's varying levels to that, right?
Yes.
But even just unconscious bias or not promoting someone because of their religious identity or whatever it is that could lead to. And schools are a big educator, right? Like schools are, other than your parents, you learn at school.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So if we have this system in place that is meant to educate, that is meant to teach, it can't be that we just teach things that are practical and theoretical. We also need to teach how to counter hate. It's a great opportunity to use to make sure that people understand each other. And I explained it to somebody the other day that it isn't so much about that somebody has the right to not have to learn about other religions or whatever. It's about you have the right to get to know your neighbor, so that you're more comfortable, so that you're not living in this state of discomfort. Because underneath discrimination and racism and hate, it's fear. People are taught to be afraid of one another.
Yeah, especially of what they call fear of the unknown, because
exactly
it is fired by ignorance.
Yeah, exactly. But if we can use knowledge to get rid of those fears, to say, people dress differently, but it's not a big deal. And it's, you can live side by side and it's not a big issue. And no one is trying to take your spot in the economy and all those different things, that the hate would eventually go away. And that's a 30-year project. That's not going to happen overnight.
Yes, unfortunately, a lot of the elected institutions, they more deal with politics rather than policies.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that our politicians and leaders have to think about it. I'm a certified coach. When I coach people, even on individual basis, I will tell them that you have to set a 3 or a 5-year goal for yourself, where you will be in 3 years or in 5 years.
Yeah.
In 5 years, and then we reverse engineer it to the next month what they are supposed to do, and the month after, etc. So the government, I think, needs to have that kind of thing. Unfortunately, our time is up. I would have loved to discuss with you for another hour or so. Do you have a last message for the viewers?
Yeah, we live in a beautiful country, but everything takes more work, and we have to keep it beautiful, and we have to make it better every single day. And that can only happen if we all work together. We all, work really, really hard to make sure that we keep having this wonderful experience and make it better for everyone. Get involved. Get involved in your communities, get involved in your school board, in your local school, get involved in your residents association. That's my message.
Well, that's a great message, and thank you very much. And dear viewers, please share this program on your social media pages. You heard very important things that perhaps so far in the past 20 sessions we didn't hear this completely different aspect towards diversity, towards racism, discrimination, and also civic activities of how to bring changes in the society. So this is very important. Please share it. And just for your information, we will be posting this on YouTube channel for the Afghan Association. And one last acknowledgement I would like to say is that this program is an initiative of the Afghan Association of Ontario to increase awareness of this issue of racism, discrimination, Islamophobia, and all kinds of hatred. And it is done in collaboration with and partial funding by the Government of Canada. And until next week, I would like to say goodbye to you. I hope you will share this program with your friends so they can watch it also. And the more people in the community can watch this, the better Canada will be for our children and our younger generation. And I think we owe it to them to make it that. So thank you very much. And thank you, Nokha, for your time and your insights and your wisdom in this and your activism.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. So